Welcome to recoverHER, the podcast where your healing journey begins. I'm Heather Novak, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Tracey Oppenheim, a compassionate psychiatrist. Today, we embark on a path of recovery and self-discovery. We are dedicated to inspiring each and every one of you to overcome your struggles and live your best, most fulfilling life. Your recovery starts now, and we're here with you every step of the way.
It's only up from here, 'cause there's no one else that's me.
Welcome back to another episode of recoverHER podcast. I'm Heather Novak, here with my host, Dr. Tracey Oppenheim.
What's up, recoverHER community?
Hi, we're in different seats today.
I know it feels backwards, but also kind of good.
It feels good to you?
Yeah,
All
I
right,
like change is good, right?
All right, yeah, it is good. Change is good. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional, Dr. Oppenheim.
Ooh, it's getting deep
Deep,
so
right,
early.
Right away, real deep. So the feedback from the last couple of episodes has been so overwhelming and
been great.
positive. I'm glad that my story of recovery and alcoholism resonates with people. So we thought we would talk a little bit about some of the different modalities that you can.
Yeah, I thought a great way to do it would be to really talk about, you talked about having a recovery community and why that's important, but we haven't really talked about all the other things you did. I'm a big team girl. I think it's so important to have the right team, surrounding you in life, whether that's, family, friends, but then also like your healers, right? The people that are going to help you uncover, your own inner healing intelligence. So in addition to being dedicated to a recovery community, what other modalities, did you encounter along the way to have this deeply rooted sobriety?
Yeah, I think that I keep hearing the word safety, right? Because if you feel safe and you have within yourself or you have people, that's the most important component in order to heal, right? Is to have an element of safety. So I definitely had that within relationships and a foundation in 12-step work and fellowship. I wanted more, however, and I wanted to go deeper. So I sought out a program through the Meadows in Scottsdale, their IOP program, intensive outpatient treatment. And they have this, I think I went for 8 weeks, Monday through Friday, 8 to 1. And I loved that. There was a brain spa. And
Sounds so easy.
It sounds so fun, doesn't it?
Yes.
To me, it is. Just there are elements about healing, and I think healing should be fun, right? It can't all be
I think there's room for all of it.
To trudge the road of happy destiny, right? That you're not just constantly swimming upstream. I do like to explore the different modalities of healing for sure.
So what was the structure of this IOP?
So they had group sessions, which was basically talk therapy, which was nice to share with other humans that were there recovering from or getting help with their alcohol use disorder, maybe some drug use. There were lots of people there just dealing with problems of anxiety, codependency, and depression. So tools reminding each and every, the whole world would benefit from being able to experience
Absolutely.
from this type of program, or just go see the movie Inside Out so you know who's in charge of your control board in your brain. But, to not let those character defects become so dominant, fear and anger and anxiety running the show constantly. So to let some of those feelings and emotions just take a back seat to
So you would roll. You were in. You committed to this about 8-week program, about 5 days a week.
Yep.
Come in the morning.
Yeah. Small group, chatting away. And then we had an opportunity to break off into, they had the brain spa, which I mentioned was, that I loved.
What the hell is a brain spa?
Yeah,
What components were there?
There were, so you could listen to meditations and different forms of meditation. And I love meditating. I practice a transcendental meditation today, which is 20 minutes twice a day. And I find that to be so beneficial for kind of bringing me back into the here and now and living in the moment, and not worrying about the fear of the unknown future, which tends to, in my mind, create so much anxiety of the things that I can't control and the unknown future. And then if my brain is on any given moment is thinking about things that happened yesterday or in the past or back in my childhood or whatever that may be, the moment that I leave the here and now and leave and go into the past, then I can tend to suffer from some sort of, depression or sadness in the past. The fear of the unknown future is anxiety. But everything in the here and now, in this very moment sitting here talking to you, is perfect, is just as
Thank
it
you.
should be. You're welcome. But everything is good in the moment, right? I can just settle in and let my nervous system be calm, kind of just take a deep breath and exhale. Your shoulders drop and you just can be in the moment.
Well,
and that's a beautiful thing. So
let's-
meditation.
Yeah, let's give meditation a little bit of a shout out, and we'll have experts on that will really give a how-to in later episodes. But I just want to say, number one, people have a lot of preconceived notions about meditation, so they think, and there's so many, and there's so many different ways to meditate. And actually, you introduced me to meditation, and I was
remember.
very, very
Reluctant to say the least.
Yes.
You were a little resistant to it because it's hard.
Resistant?
I know people that can't sit still for, and I just taught somebody a couple of days ago how to meditate because they thought that, you do transcendental, you do TM, you've got to sit there for 20 minutes. There's no way, and I'm doing this wrong. And literally, I sat with her and said, "Come here, we're going to meditate right now." And we just sat down and we closed our eyes. I held her hand. We just took a couple of deep breaths in through our nose and exhaled through our mouth, breathing into our diaphragm and just kind of settling, grounding, right? And then all of these thoughts come up.
Yes.
And people think that meditation is supposed to clear your mind of thoughts.
So glad you're going here. Yes, this is so important.
And it's not. That monkey mind is looped.
Yep.
You're going to be thinking about what do I need to buy what am I going to make for dinner? Is my kid going to make the soccer team? Are we going to have enough money to pay rent? Like there's thoughts. Is that deal going to close? Am I going to go on that vacation? Did the flight just get canceled? All of this stuff. Is going to play through while you're sitting there.
I like to think of
breathing.
it as little discharges. That's all. It's okay.
Well, and they do teach you that in Transcendental, that it's actually stress leaving your body when you can just sit and you're not even conscious that you're breathing or even what those thoughts are. You just know that you cannot shut your brain off. It's so intense.
And that's what I hear a lot from patients, from people that I work with is I can't meditate. I'm bad at meditating. No such thing.
Right. So even if you can set your timer for 3 minutes and sit still, dedicate 3 minutes to yourself and sit and you allow all those thoughts, all the plans, all the worries, the stress, the anxieties, everything. You just let it come like clouds passing in the sky. Just let the thoughts be. And I found some comfort in knowing that that's potentially stress leaving my body. just simply step one, kind of just sitting 3 minutes, letting the thoughts come. That's meditating.
Yep. And so I think people think that, they have this vision that you have to be, perfectly quiet, perfectly still. Your mind has to be empty, that you're going to have some, beautiful spiritual experience. And certainly that can happen over time, right? But especially for people who are just living our everyday lives, right? We just have to create space and time to be with ourselves. And I want to also tell people that if you're in a state of dysregulation, meaning your emotions
Your
are
nervous
all,
system?
your emotions are all over the place, you feel uncomfortable, there can be things you need to do to heal and slow down before you even jump into meditation. So that idea of safety,
Is
internal,
we brought
external,
the word up again.
it's so
you have
important.
to be safe.
So there might be things you need to do before you can even start a dedicated meditative practice. I actually had a really cool experience. So I actually learned to meditate for the first time when I was in 6th grade.
Okay, tell me about that.
Yeah. And so I was at science camp.
A 6th grade Tracey
Science
meditating
camp.
science camp. Got
Science. And there was this boy that everybody had a crush on, and his name was Jonah.
Okay.
And his father came, and he was like unlike any other dude I'd ever met before. I think he might be a psychologist. I don't know, but he was for sure a hippie. And so he sat us all down and had us sit, cross-legged, palms up, just kind of, relaxed, closed our eyes, told us to, kind of with our eyes closed, look up, have our eyes facing upwards. And then when we would breathe in, say to ourselves, I am.
I am.
And then when you would exhale, peaceful. And I did this for several years, and it was really important to me. And then, like we do so many times in life, you forget about things.
It's always about life is always about forgetting and then remembering and
Over
forgetting and then
over
remembering
and over again. And so then, you open this back up for me, and it's been such a great part of my day-to-day practice. Some days are terrible. Some days feel so blissful. But in that, I remembered Jonah and I remembered his father.
Nice.
And I actually reached out to him.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah. To his father to say thank you.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful practice.
Meditating is just a healing form, and it's the end of kind of having inner conflict with yourself. It's just the beginning of that, right?
So you're brain spying with some meditation.
Brain spying with some meditation. And then we had opportunities to practice somatic experience.
Ooh, say more about that.
Well, all of the energy that's trapped in our body, right? So tell me a little bit about, from a doctor's perspective, what somatic experience is.
Sure. So, I mean, it's a particular form of therapy. For a long time, we just focused on the mind and our thinking. And then we now know how important that mind-body connection is. And being able to regulate the nervous system through our association with our bodies. And it's really interesting when you start being guided in that practice because you, like for me, for example, I didn't realize that the way I navigated my emotions was so much modulated through my body. So I constantly brace myself.
Oh,
like there's a car
Holding lots
accident
of
coming.
tension,
Right. And so it's really a practice of
and for me, I did that too when it caused migraines and stress, tension, headaches.
Yeah. So it's really a way of developing a guided relationship with your body, therapist led. And there's so many different techniques and ways to get there. I'm curious in your spa, how they had it done.
So somatic experience was one form, and then EMDR was another. And again, you mentioned that there's several different techniques with EMDR. Maybe you can allude to a little bit more about what that particular modality is too. But rapid eye movement, and we would use handles that were almost like video game vibrator in our hands. Little buzzers, yeah.
Yeah, so the EMDR is eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. And when you're just having conversation, talking about memories, for example, you know, you're thinking, you're thinking mind. Our defenses are very, very active. So we can talk about things, but we can still be very far away from our emotions to those things. And so what we continue to get better and better at in psychology, psychiatry is how do we access our deeper feelings. And so EMDR has its roots in trauma therapy. So it's a way to help people originally process traumatic memories while using different parts of your brain. And that was either through actually moving your eyes or what you describe now as holding buzzers. So
which distracts your brain.
So you're kind of narrating different thoughts and feelings while you're being guided. And there's specific steps and techniques, but it's
But it's really helpful because it doesn't change so say you were in a car accident, a traumatic event. It doesn't obviously take away from the fact that that happened, but it changes your feelings and the way that you process how you're holding that too, that tension within your body that you may not even be aware of consciously.
Because the trauma is over, right? But it lives on in our minds and lives on in our bodies. So it's really about disconnecting the trauma and our feelings and our thoughts so that we can have we're not being chased by the lion, we're not in a car accident. So it's helping people reprogram their mind, their subconscious experience of that trauma and get their nervous system healthy again. But it's really important, I think, to highlight the fact that they were doing this in your intensive outpatient program for addiction, because addiction is not standalone. And it's so strongly associated with trauma.
Right. Or unresolved trauma too. Right.
So I think the fact that you were at a program where they weren't just talking about, what's a craving and what do you do when you have a craving, and cravings only last for 90 seconds. All of this is really important information, but they really were able to help you get into other aspects of your life.
Right. And they were somatic experience, meditation, EMDR, the three that we've just touched upon were initial ways in sobriety for me to start to, in a safe environment, again, the word safety, to be able to kind of dive in deeper to the inner workings of my own brain, of my own being, of my own experience of life, to be able to kind of uncover those rocks, uncover them.
What do you think made it, why were you so willing to dive in? So often people will say, well, I'll just try to control it or try to manage it. Why were you so willing to open yourself up?
Because I had seen the disease of alcoholism take so many lives of people that I loved around me. And so often in family structures of people who are that come from homes that have addiction or alcoholics, that when there are feelings or there's a traumatic event, say there's some kind of abuse or just anything goes on, it's swept under the rug.
Yes.
It's never...
It's not talked about.
it's never brought out into the light. That's why they always say, I mean, you've heard the elephant in the room. There's an elephant suffocating us in the room, but we won't talk about it.
Yep.
We won't. And I want to talk about it. Because I know that secrets keep you sick. And I want to be the best version of myself that I possibly can be. And that starts with sobriety and not drinking. And it allows me to play in places because it's hard work, but I look at it, the brain spa is this beautiful opportunity. Well, the Meadows calls it the brain spa. I think that everybody could benefit from something like that, to be able to look within in a safe environment, to peel away the layers of our complicated lives.
And there's so many different levels to healing, right? You can do traditional outpatient therapy. You mentioned 12-step recovery.
Right.
There's
Lots of different ways.
Intensive outpatient programs where you could have more consistent, more intense support. There's a residential treatment where you can go to stay for, 30, 60, 90 days. And the part from, there's medication-assisted therapy, right, where you could take, things like Suboxone for opiate use disorder or, for alcohol use disorder. We have medication-assisted therapy as well, naltrexone to help with cravings.
How effective are they?
Yeah, so the evidence-based medicine is really, really good. And so we know that they are effective. If you look at, it always kind of cracks me up a little bit too. And I get it, but people say, have just put like terrible things into their body for so many years. And then as a psychiatrist, you make a suggestion of, hey, you've tried to get sober X, Y, and Z times, there is evidence-based medicine that can help you. And sometimes people are like, no.
They're resistant to that?
I will not take any medication. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah,
but you were just doing methamphetamine last week.
Yeah,
like,
right?
it's going to be okay. Like,
doesn't make any sense.
Whatever we need to do. But I think what's more exciting, like in recovery, is when you see people wake up to themselves. That is sexy and beautiful, and you really understand, you really see it, that it's so much more than the addiction. Like the addiction, in a way, I know you have to address, you always like to say what can kill you first, right? Which is
the road narrows as life goes on, or when you are in recovery. And so, you just start saying, oh, should I be taking something to help me sleep at night?
Yep.
Do I need that?
So I get it. We have to address like what can potentially kill you first.
Right.
But then when you understand that the addiction just represents a distancing from yourself, it's just an old survival mechanism. It's just a way to try to survive, to try to, disregard painful feelings or past experiences. Seeing people come home to themselves in sobriety is
pretty amazing, and it's
beautiful.
Cool. You're saying that reminds me of watching somebody who I know and love who recently has gotten sober, and you should take a picture.
Yes,
and I love to do this actually. Take a picture of them, and you're crawling in from the wreckage. You're admitting defeat and surrendering when you are at your bottom. It is not a pretty sight, and you're asking for help, right? So but for women in particular, take a picture of them on day one when they've asked for help and they want to quit drinking. And 90 days in, 6 months in, everything changes about them. Everything. They're, just the inflammation of having that out of your system and your body, but their eyes change. The white of their eyes, you can actually see. Their chin is held. Everything about their
shifts.
Everything shifts.
Coming back online, it's beautiful, right? To wake up again.
It's one of my favorite things to get to witness in another person.
But I think Gabor Mate, he really has helped so many people understand that you can't separate out the trauma from the addiction. And I know the medical model really wants to focus on the disease or the biologic mechanism of an addiction. And yes, like that's for sure helpful to understand. And it's interesting to look at, you know, PET scans or functional MRI scans and understand the pathways at play and what is a craving and, you know, dopamine and all of these things. But I think what's beautiful is understanding that you were trying to mitigate pain, right? You were trying to eliminate pain by whatever way possible.
Right.
And so that we need to deal with the addiction so that we can get you, allow you to wake up again.
Right. Back online.
You know, we need you.
Right?
We need you here. We
Yeah.
want you here. And you matter, but you have to be willing to deal with those painful feelings that come up. You have to be able to look at yourself seriously.
Right.
You have to be able to look at your intergenerational trauma.
It's a lot, Tracey.
Really look at what your family of origin story was to understand how things came to be. So you did the IOP. You had an opportunity to do some EMDR.
Yeah. And you asked about somatic experience earlier and kind of what that feels like. I'm better at describing what it feels like, right? Or a story behind it. Because EMDR to me, you do such a beautiful job at not only the lending some credibility to what those modalities are, but with EMDR, I'm better at describing what it feels like and what it looks like.
Yep.
EMDR to me feels like a meandering river. I never know where it's going to lead me with a thought. It's just like the roots of a tree, and how that heals trauma is pretty miraculous. But I have found EMDR to be very, very helpful.
And is this a true statement for you? Would you say that so when we were getting to know each other and you would describe aspects of your life, you know, I like one thing that stood out was, I mean, like growing up, things were good.
Right.
You know, I went
the word normal a lot, right? In quotes, though.
And then you said, you know, after high school, I went to Europe.
Yeah, like I'm good.
I'm so good. Would you agree that you didn't recognize the level of trauma and dysfunction you experienced growing up?
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's wild,
I had
right?
no idea. I knew that I was different, that my family was different than other families. I did have a recognition of that, but I did everything within my limited power to hide that, to pretend that life was better than it really was. So
I think that that's really important. And I can, you know, even my own experience of, you know, and this was after years of education, you know, child psychiatry, fellowship, general psychiatry, psychosomatics, going through my own psychotherapy as part of my training. You know, it really wasn't until after my divorce when I was re-engaged in therapy that I realized my childhood was so many great aspects. See, I had to do it again. Like I had to defend it, but also so fucking crazy, right? I had a sister who died that no one told me about. That, you know, I wasn't told that until I was older. I just remarkable dysfunction. And you don't realize it. So often when people are coming into recovery, they're like, I just like to drink. That's it. You know, I don't have any problems, but I believe that suffering.
if I just had more money in the bank, everything would be fine. Or if he just acted better, things would be fine.
We do these things. We act out when we're far away from ourselves spiritually.
Right.
When we're suffering when we are not getting a need met. And maybe we don't even realize what that need is.
No.
But I think it's so important that, that crew at the Meadows, when you went through your trauma timeline,
Yeah.
they were weeping.
I know. They were weeping. And the trauma timeline for the audience that doesn't know what a trauma timeline is, it's just, you have this opportunity to do a writing assignment and write out every single thing that was challenging or bad that happened to you. And I literally just thought, I knew my life wasn't normal, but it wasn't that bad, was it? So I wrote out everything from stories from 4 years old that I could remember, on up to recent times. And I had pages written out. And when I had shared in this group setting, there were probably 40 people in the room, and I looked up and there were people that were crying. And, they said and then there was an opportunity to get some feedback if you wanted to. And I said, sure. And they said, we didn't know that you had survived or endured all that. And we have respect for you. We're so sorry for you. You're very resilient, which is a word I just hate because what choice do you have for survival, right? Resilience. So I've always been told that I'm very resilient and that I can make anything happen. And sometimes it's exhausting. It's just exhausting to have to feel like that weight is on my shoulders. But
we shouldn't have to be resilient.
Yeah.
Thank God we can be, but it shouldn't have to be.
So I was resilient because of all of the trauma that happened back in my childhood, for sure. But a lot of those were tools too that were uncovered and I could dive deeper into at the Meadows along with the somatic experience. And so the way that felt for me, I was just watching recently in our front yard, there was a dog chasing a rabbit and the dog was unsuccessful and the rabbit knew it was safe, but it had been chased in circles all over the yard. And so intuitively it just knew, because animals are just smarter than we are, it knew to shake it off. And it just shook profusely and then let it go. And it was off hopping down the bunny trail of life. And I hung on to, unknowingly hung on to a lot of those traumatic experience energetically, internally.
Yes.
So through safe environments with the help of professionals in somatic work and trauma yoga, you hold these really, they're not very sophisticated poses. Anybody can do them, any shape or size. And you're usually laying kind of a yoga nidra pose, on your back, and you're laying in these positions and you hold them for long periods of time and you start shaking profusely like that rabbit who is safe. And your body just shakes uncontrollably and you're releasing some of that old energy that you've stored and hung on to. So that's what somatic experience feels like. Tracey, you did such a great job at describing what that technique is scientifically, but so trauma yoga, trauma art, just a beautiful, safe place to have a real deep dive into mental health.
And then after the IOP, you continued doing 12-step work.
Then you're off and running in daily life, right? Well, always 1 minute at a time, one breath at a time, one day at a time. Sometimes it's too much, so you just I've learned how to deal with life on life's terms a little differently than I did before, because when somebody would cut me off into traffic, I'd react.
Yes.
When something wasn't going my way, or most of the time, just when kind of activated, you want to numb out with some form. And if you're an alcoholic, usually that would be alcohol, right? And that would help just alleviate some of that tension. At least that's what it felt like on the surface. It would give you that pause. And for me, it gave me that
pause,
exhale.
exactly.
The
Yes.
pause.
Yeah.
And now I've learned to fill that pause. And sometimes with nothing at all, just sitting for the 3 minutes in meditation that we brought up earlier can be hell sometimes. It's not easy to do that. I mean, we're bringing up all of these different techniques and opportunities and modalities of healing, and they sound simple, but they are not easy to lean into.
And I think I also want to highlight, it's okay. It's very important to titrate the treatment and the depth of the treatment based on how you're doing, what your level of safety is, how you're able to regulate your nervous system. So before, because sometimes, oh my gosh, like, people with alcohol use disorder being all or nothing, go figure.
Yeah,
but sometimes, you just want to like all the healing all at once. And that's just a way to
pretty overwhelming.
Well, that's just a way to re-traumatize yourself. So even before you get to this,
Just easy does it.
Easy does it. And learning how to regulate your nervous system, learning what to do when you're activated.
Right. And those
really
techniques
important.
are really, really simple. That I just, they're little tools that maybe you learn in kindergarten, right? That as an adult, we've just forgotten. So when you're activated, putting both feet on the ground.
Getting grounded. Mm-hmm.
Just sitting and putting both feet on the ground. Or if you're lucky enough to be able to take your shoes off and go walk in the grass and just be outside, just breathe, look at the sun, go lay down, take a nap. Those little, what you would tell a 5-year-old if they were having a tantrum.
Yeah, but somehow we feel like we have to like push and push and push, and that can.
I sure do.
That can do more damage. And kind of years into your sobriety, you started to take a look at some of the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Right, I have. So when sobriety became a way of living again, and I could remember how beautiful life really is and to be present one day at a time. So sobriety wasn't as much of a chore of how am I going to stay sober today? You're not white knuckling it when you're getting activated or triggered by something of just like, fuck it, I'm going to go drink. When those thoughts and feelings are subsided, then, you have this opportunity to kind of dive deeper. And so that was when, I think it was in the last episode when I mentioned, and people really resonated with this because they were like, how did you know you had the fears of, because before that, I had no idea that I didn't think I was afraid of anything. And in some work that I have done inside of the ketamine medicine space, I was introduced to my fear of being abandoned and fear of not being unconditionally loved.
And I want to take a pause there because I think, well, number one, we could talk about what ketamine is, so it's dissociative anesthetic. So it's a molecule that's been around for a long time, initially used in medicine as an anesthetic. And now in psychiatry, we know it's a very powerful antidepressant. So just the molecule in and of itself, the way it impacts the brain, has great antidepressant properties. It's the quickest way to help with suicidal thinking. It works very quickly, but depending on the route and the dose and therapeutically, the practitioner doing it with you, you can do ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, which also offers an opportunity to get into your subconscious, spend time with your own inner healing intelligence and really make sense of yourself, right? Because you're not defended in the same way, when we're in our regular way of being. So these non-ordinary states of consciousness,
so beautiful,
can be very powerful healers. And so you mentioned that it was inside of the ketamine that you started learning about some of your attachment wounds.
Right.
So fear of being abandoned.
Fear of being abandoned, fear of not being unconditionally loved. Yeah.
And do you have a
And
sense?
that, of course, that impacts your attachment styles with the relationships that you have on the
Yes.
outside world with other human beings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I didn't even know that, Tracey. I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah.
That was my fears were driving every single relationship, every single maneuver I made in life.
Yep. And
unconsciously. I didn't know that.
And it comes back to the importance of awareness.
Right,
So
awareness.
that if you're working with, a talented therapist,
So
psychiatrist,
important.
coach who can help you understand
Uncover.
what your wounding is from childhood, right? Do you have ideas of I'm defective, I'm not
Good
worthy,
enough.
I'm not good enough. What is your attachment style? Are you, and we will get into this in more depth, but am I securely attached where I'm able to navigate relationships in a healthy way? Or, I did not realize, and again, this is after all my
Training.
training.
Right.
I didn't realize that I had an avoidant attachment style, which would keep me very far away,
Distant from important relationships in your life.
Absolutely. And again, it was the psychedelics that really
Helped uncover that.
helped uncover that for sure.
We talk a lot about, you and I talk a lot about uncovering any
Yes.
blockages, right, that stand in our way from the flow, stand in our way from the best versions of ourselves, that it's important to, I want to know what it is so that I can understand it, so that I can honor it and grow from it, let it go, and just be a better version of myself.
Yeah, I love that question of what am I avoiding, right?
What am I avoiding?
There's a lot of yumminess, when you really allow yourself to be honest with that.
What's standing in my way from my usefulness to you and my fellows? There's a prayer I always say, because I kind of comes back to that first component that I was talking about with meditation, that I believe that prayer is talking to God, which is something I do all the time. I'm not an overly religious person. I'm a very spiritual one, though, that has a plugged in, deep-rooted connection with a higher power. That prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening to God.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. When you started doing work in the psychedelic space, was that met with judgment in the recovery community?
I think that is for sure a tricky topic to address, at least in recovery spaces. But I don't care at all, because I don't care about the judgment, number one. But number two, I want, under the care and guidance of professionals, I want to have proven results and benefits for my own mental health. And I want to be the best mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally that I can be. So if there are tools out there that can help me access that part of me, I absolutely will seek that out. So I think that the judgment is based on maybe, which I've not really encountered, to be honest with you, but I think that could be based on the unknowns.
Fears.
Yeah, of unknowns. And I'm not afraid of entering my own mind. I'm just not.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful quality of yours for sure.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of that.
Ironically, the psychiatrist here is slightly afraid of entering her own mind, but I do it anyways.
So brave.
So brave.
So brave, Dr. Oppenheim.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But would I...
But I am not afraid of going inside of my own unconscious mind.
Yeah, that's a beautiful quality.
Because I've always had experience of when I've looked within, I've always been able to come out on the other side a better version of myself, or simply with a tidbit, a more with more information, with more awareness of me,
Yep.
of something that I didn't know before.
Yep.
So because I have that natural, I suppose, curiosity, I want to know more of me so that you can know her, but I want to know myself more every single day. And I want to continue to grow and to be better and healthier.
And I think, as you were talking, I got a little download that I think sometimes what happens for us is we can get into hopelessness. And I think hopelessness it's very hard for anything to grow from that place. So I think what I want people listening to know is even if you're not sure that things can get better, if you could even just allow yourself to be curious about the idea, well, maybe, right? Maybe they can be, and just to kind of open the door a little bit to hope, because there are so many different ways to heal. There are people, number one, you matter. There are people that want to know you, that want to walk alongside of you. And, there's so many different ways to do it. So for some people, EMDR might feel terrible. I did EMDR and I couldn't. It's a great evidence-based treatment. I know it's helped so many of, friends, family, patients. It didn't resonate with me. It was really challenging.
I know a lot of women who have endured sexual trauma that have gotten a lot of relief inside EMDR spaces.
Yeah, so I think you just have to keep going. You have to we want to, give you information. You might spend time with your therapist. You might not resonate with that therapist. There's so many talented healers out there.
You just saying that reminds me of people that have gone to recovery meetings, for instance, and they show up at 1 and they check it out.
Yep.
And they hate it. And, you're looking at it too from a clouded lens with a different pair of glasses on from your perspective that might not be the healthiest one at that moment in time. But fine, you hate a meeting, go to another one.
Yes.
I think there's 1,000 meetings a day in a metropolitan area. There's so many. There's hundreds for sure. So then try something else. So there's a new therapist, a different doctor you can go talk to. There's another AA meeting you can go check out. Go to a different Al-Anon meeting. Go to a different Alateen meeting if you're younger. There's something for everybody. You just got to keep exploring, being curious about yourself and being brave enough to show up.
Yeah, and we have so many different great biologic treatments. We have so many great therapeutic modalities, and there's so many different communities to belong to. So if you're operating in a space today of feeling like this is as good as it gets, or there's no hope for me, that's
just simply not true. It's a lie that we tell ourselves.
Exactly. And in a way, sometimes that's just a part of us. I love
it's a protector, right?
Internal family systems. We'll talk about that.
Good.
But that's just a thing trying to keep us safe. And we can work with that part to allow yourself to hope.
Right.
So Dr. Peter Levine has one of my favorite quotes when it comes to somatic experiencing. He said, "Trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside of us in the absence of an empathetic witness." And I think that really rings true for myself and what I see in working with other people. So trauma causes disconnection from ourselves, from our body, from the people that we love, and from the rest of the world. And part of what happens inside of that somatic experiencing relationship is that you have a therapist walking alongside of you who's witnessing you, who's creating an element of safety in the environment, and who's helping you to process these things that you had been stuck doing on your own. And that really allows your world to go from being very small to opening back up. Some of the key concepts that Dr. Levine talks about are sensation-focused experiences. So that would be where a therapist is sitting with you, helping you check out what's going on inside of your body. And that's something that we don't do enough. I think a lot of these key concepts should just be applied in life in general. So having you check in with your body. What are you noticing? Where are you noticing it? And as you're talking about the trauma, it's really important to pendulate that experience. And so that's just a fancy way of saying swing in between feeling some distress and then taking time to come back to a state of calmness and going back and forth in a way that allows you to practice that so that you know in the real world, outside of the therapy room, that when you're feeling some distress, you have the capability to shift into calmness and then come back into, feeling some uncomfortable feelings. And that is related to the concept of titration as well. So titrating, meaning let's not overwhelm our system. It's kind of like, remember when you get in the car, you forgot that you were rocking out. When you got out of the car and you jump in the car, you turn it on and it's like volume's way too high and you're like, holy shit. That's the same thing that can happen to us when we're processing feelings and emotions and sensations in our body, right? Like if it's a tidal wave, you're not going to be able to stay with it. So you want to start low and go slow. Somatic experiencing really highlights resource building. So what does that mean? That means developing internal and external resources so that when you're experiencing some distress, you can start feeling safe again. So internal resources might be, for me, for example, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, there's images that I can conjure up in my mind, say, of my dog that, immediately make me feel better or make me laugh. External resources can be a particular person, place, or thing that creates those same feelings of calmness. Dr. Levine really highlights that whole person approach in somatic experiencing. So you're dealing with the body and you're also dealing with the mind as well as your environment. And that's a really beautiful, beautiful way to heal. So I want to try a little exercise if you're game for it.
I am.
Just to highlight how quickly the sensations in our body can shift to our emotions without us even being aware of it. And this is a skill that people learn in somatic experiencing, in the therapeutic setting. But I think this is just money for day-to-day living because we're processing so much so quickly that we're unaware of. And when we ignore our body, that's what causes stress, causes activation, can cause shutdown. So just being able to cue in to what you're really feeling is important.
So that I don't abandon myself.
Are you ready? You down?
Oof. I'm ready.
Okay.
As long as you don't make me cry.
Can't promise.
Okay, glasses? No glasses.
No glasses.
All right.
Okay, so just get super comfortable.
Got it.
Feel your feet on the floor. Feel your body being hugged by these excellent swivel chairs that do feel like they're hugging you.
Do. Perfect size.
Okay, take a couple deep breaths. Beautiful. And then close your eyes. And can you just tell me what you're noticing in your body, if anything?
That I'm letting some of the tension go after the exhales, and there's tingling sensations throughout my body.
Where are you noticing the tingling?
I notice it in my extremities, my fingers and my toes.
And would you describe it as a pleasant sensation?
I'm irritated by it.
Okay, so noticing some irritation. Okay. Anything else?
I have a little tightness in my chest going on.
Okay. All right, and I invite you to take a couple more clearing breaths. Okay. Now I'm going to hand you something with a photo. We're not going to talk about what the photo is per se, and then we'll check in again with the body, see if there's a shift. Okay, you can open up your eyes. Stare at that for...
Honestly.
Yep. Just really take that picture in.
No one else can see this image, right?
No one else can see this image. Okay.
Okay.
You can hand that back to me.
Oh.
Give it back. All right. Close your eyes. Now tell me what you're feeling in the bod. Oh, this is going to be good.
That energy that I was describing that I feel in my extremities is kind of flowing throughout my body now, almost electrified. And there is an intensity in my chest.
And would you say that overall you're feeling...
Oh, in my jaw.
All right. So you can open up your eyes. Just take a couple deep breaths.
All right.
Good. So I showed Heather a picture of an individual who will remain nameless, who she can't stand. And can you see how quickly you absorb that through your body?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing, right? So if you think about that happening so often during the day, you know, we're not even talking about, well, in a way it is traumatic potentially, but we're getting images fed into us all day without paying attention to what's going on in our body. So if Heather was left in that heightened state, like we often are, without taking a moment to be able to dial in and be sensitive to the feelings in our body so that we can then shake it off, like Dr. Levine says, in somatic experiencing, you know, being able to discharge those trapped sensations. Otherwise, they just get stuck there, and you're walking around the rest of your day being activated as fuck.
Oh my God.
Okay. Can we try one more?
Right. Yes, please.
Okay.
Crazy how much you can give away.
That's right.
Your, that full-on activation of your nervous system, but that you give that power away to someone else.
Totally. Oof. And so if you're disconnected...
And then I'm holding it. They have no idea.
No idea. And if you're disconnected from your body, like most of us are, you're not even picking up on those cues. So we talked about earlier with the somatic experiencing, the importance of titration.
Right.
And not being flooded and being able to pendulate back and forth from distress to being able to come back into calmness. Those are all skills that we can use throughout our day.
So we do not end up abandoning ourselves.
Right, by either getting super duper activated or super duper shut down. So when I ignore my body and what's going on emotionally for me, when I ignore that for a long enough period of time, my body says, night, night. And I just get super shut down. I have no energy. I'm fatigued. I can't operate anymore. Ready for picture 2?
Yes.
All right. Take that in for a few minutes. All right. Now go back inside. Close your eyes. And tell us what you're feeling, where you're feeling it. Just do a nice body scan.
Well, from my head down all the way to my toes, I'm feeling this warmth.
Yes.
That's just cascading almost through my veins. And it feels like we were talking about these chairs. It feels like an embrace. It feels like a hug. And it feels like an exhale, definitely. Yeah.
I'll have what she's having.
2 different images can conjure up very different reactions.
So quickly, right? So I think that's both encouraging and, in a way, also frightening.
Right, just to be aware of how, and then to be able to just notice internally, when you're activated, when you're triggered by something, that just to even know that that's happening and that I'm carrying that energy.
Yeah, the body is the barometer.
Right, within me. That, and it's so helpful to be able to ground and stop and just notice that feeling. And then I'm not, by becoming aware of it, then I'm not taking it into the rest of my day.
Because you would have skills to be able to shift it. And I think so often what happens when we get upset is we want to talk about it. We want to intellectualize it before we give our body a chance to discharge, to come back to that state of calmness.
Yes.
And so we kind of, oftentimes we can leave our body out of that state. One more picture.
Okay.
All right.
Hope it's another feel good.
All right. Here you go.
Oh. Oh, that does make me cry. Oof.
And so you're having the big emotions come up. And let's see where you're feeling it in your body.
I feel it all in my throat.
And this one, I think you should describe for our listeners what's going on.
It just was an image that conjures up a lot of grief. Because I was so loved.
You feel comfortable describing the image?
It was an animal that I had that we recently held and helped her transition and put her to sleep.
So now this is a feeling of sadness? Is that what you would say?
Yeah, sadness, missing her, longing for her.
So let's see where it's, close your eyes. You're totally safe and so loved. And let's just see where you're noticing that in your body. See if there's any tension. See if there's any particular part of your body where you're holding that grief and sadness.
I feel that in my heart. In my chest area, definitely. That tightness that I was talking about. And
if you're comfortable, you can, just like you intuitively knew what to do, put your hand over your heart and breathe into it. And is that shifting it? Just those breaths?
it is. It's calming. I feel held. I feel loved. I feel secure.
Thank you. Come back to me when you're ready.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So walk me through that for you. Obviously, we did that rapid fire.
And generating 3 vastly different emotions, right? I think the first one started out with anger and rage.
Yes.
And the second one was love and passion. And joy and those feelings. And this third image conjured up grief and sadness and boy, we just covered them all.
So earlier I talked about like
That's
safety
amazing.
and pendulating and titration, which I totally ignored, but I know she can handle it. But I do really want to highlight how much all of those feelings were happening
Yes.
inside your body.
Inside my body.
And that's happening to us
all
the day.
right.
All day.
All day. Yeah, it's great to be aware of that. You know, to know yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to allow and to sit with. I think I was meditating this morning, and some meditations are just simply, they're excruciating because you're just sitting inside the shit, inside the feelings, inside all of it, the monkey mind. So to allow myself just to have feelings and to sit with them, for me, it's pretty profound.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can shift those feelings by paying attention to our body, by using the internal resourcing or external resourcing that we talked about earlier. Right. So bringing the body online in a way that's safe and slow can be really important. So for some people that I work with, you know, when, and I was this way, you know, as well, when you initially go inside to see how your body's feeling, you might not feel anything. And then for other people, you know, who are very, very sensitive, just going inside even for a minute just can be overwhelming. So it's really this balancing act. And I'm realizing how important that is in life too. So we have times where sensitivity is required. If we're feeling particularly sensitive, then we have to be aware of that, you know, safety setting, that pendulating between maybe, okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed in my body or in my mind. So to step away from it and then come back to it when we're ready. And then sometimes on the other side of that, you know, is where you can need some grit and some strength. So we really need that balance both ways. We don't totally want to avoid, but also at the same time, we totally, you know, we don't want to be totally overwhelmed,
Right.
you know, and you don't have to be.
No, you don't.
So that's why I love Dr. Levine's work with the somatic experiencing, because yes, you know, that was based on his trauma work and observing animals in the wild, and is geared towards processing trauma and emotions. But I think the skill set can be applied in so many different ways, just in our day-to-day living.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for taking me through that little exercise.
It was a little rapid.
Woo. But effective. And thank God that I am more conscious of my feelings and emotions as opposed to being unconscious to them. Yeah.
So, you know, I would wonder, for example, with migraines, you know, maybe when Heather has migraines, maybe when you're having a stretch of migraines, maybe the body, right? Maybe you've been ignoring some subtler cues, you know, that have been going on in the body. And for you talked about, you know, when you were describing your journey so eloquently, that you could be very all or nothing.
Right.
So sometimes maybe when you're like pushing through, maybe it requires more rest and gentleness.
Right.
So
Yeah, I could benefit from practicing doing the opposite of what comes naturally to me more often, for sure. Yeah.
And at other times, pushing through is exactly what what's required. So,
Yeah.
well, thanks for jumping in.
Thank you.
This episode of Recover Her.
Great
I'm
to be
excited.
back.
So good to be here with all of y'all.
Definitely.
So
All right.
give us a shout out. Fire us some questions. We'll be offering up a hot seat with Heather soon. So we're really excited for
Yeah,
that.
send us your questions. I'm happy to answer anything and everything. No topic left. No topic off limits. No topic is
No.
off limits. Right?
Definitely not.
Yep. Nothing.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Me